My mother-in-law hijacked the platinum sponsor table with my husband at my own charity gala and banished me to a dark corner by the kitchen. But halfway through the keynote, she stormed into my balcony box shrieking, "You humiliated me." Dressed to impress, Desmond had said that morning. "It's your big night. The governor is coming. We're celebrating you." The State Business Coalition was honoring my software company's community outreach program. I should have known something was completely wrong when he told me his mother, Margot, was attending. "She wants to support you," he claimed. Margot didn't support people. Margot collected status symbols. At the ballroom check-in, she snatched the platinum seating lanyards right out of Desmond's hand before I could even speak. "I'll take table 1, she announced loudly. "I need to be where the professional photographers are." I stared at her, frozen. "This is my award ceremony." "Don't be petty, dear," she said. "Desmond paid an absolute fortune for this sponsorship." I looked at my husband. He was suddenly extremely focused on his expensive watch. "The back tables are quieter anyway," he mumbled, refusing to make eye contact. "You hate loud noises." So that was it. Margot got table 1, dead center. I got table 47, shoved behind a massive concrete pillar near the kitchen where the waitstaff dumped dirty plates. The event coordinator looked genuinely mortified as she handed me a standard paper ticket. "Desmond," I said, my voice dangerously low, "please." He finally looked up, and there was no guilt in his eyes, just that tired, cowardly hope that I'd make this easy for him, the exact way I always did. "And where are you sitting?" I asked Desmond. "With me, obviously," Margot scoffed. "He needs to network with the regional board." 8 years of coming in second place. 8 years of Desmond finding the path of least resistance, permanently throwing me under his mother's steamroller. "It's just dinner, babe," he whispered. "Don't make a massive scene." I took the cheap ticket. I smiled. I didn't argue because a public meltdown was exactly what Margot wanted. A dramatic scene was a gift to her, concrete proof for her friends that I was the difficult wife. I gave her nothing. I just walked away. In the dim corner by the kitchen, I opened my phone. Something had bothered me since we stood in the lobby. Desmond was laid off from his marketing firm 7 months ago. So where did a luxury gala sponsorship come from? I logged into my company's business banking portal. $18,500 charged to the platinum sponsorship tier, drained straight out of my startup's quarterly payroll reserve. 3 months of my team's hard work, gone in one swipe so his mother could drink champagne with the governor. I refreshed the page 3 times, but the numbers remained stubbornly real. Then I checked the receipt for my current chair in my email. $65 on Desmond's personal credit card, the one he swore was completely maxed out. He hadn't celebrated me. He'd stolen my company's money to elevate his mother and tossed me into the cheapest seat. My hands went cold, then perfectly clear. I walked straight to the organizer's private office. I pulled up my corporate registry. The payment method used for table 1 was unauthorized fraud, I told the finance director. "I'm reporting it to my bank right now. I need that payment reversed immediately." A heavy pause. The director checked her tablet and nodded. "We can process the chargeback. However, the guests at table 1 will need to provide a new payment method for the $18,500 right now, or we have to clear the seats immediately." "Perfect. And I'd like to book the private VIP mezzanine box for myself." 20 minutes later, a heavy brass key sat in my palm. The private elevator opened into a stunning velvet-lined balcony overlooking the ballroom. I ordered a dry martini, a plate of Wagyu sliders, and stepped up to the glass railing. For 8 years, Margot sneered, and Desmond hid behind his phone. Tonight, I wasn't the one left holding the discomfort. My phone aggressively buzzed. Desmond, then Margot, then Desmond again. 9 missed calls before I even bothered to look down. Then I heard it. The heavy oak doors at the end of the mezzanine hall flew open, and right after, the sharp, furious click of heels coming straight toward my private box. I set my martini down on the table. I didn't move to unlock the door. A fist pounded against the mahogany wood, hard enough to rattle the brass hinges. "You humiliated me." Margot's voice tore through the quiet hallway, loud enough that a security guard stepping off the elevator stopped dead to stare at her. I stood there, one hand still resting gently on the base of my martini glass, and looked calmly at the heavy wooden door. I didn't move to open it. The pounding started again, accompanied by the rattle of the heavy brass doorknob. Margot was twisting it violently, expecting it to give way like everything else in her life. "Open this door, right now," she screamed. The event manager actually brought a credit card terminal to the table. While I was talking to the mayor's wife, I took a sip of my martini. It was perfectly cold. "Ma'am," a deep voice echoed from the hallway. The security guard. "I'm going to have to ask you to step back from the door. Don't you tell me what to do," Margot snapped. I could picture the exact look on her face, the pinched, aristocratic outrage she weaponized whenever a barista got her order wrong or a valet wasn't fast enough. "My daughter-in-law is in there. She's throwing a temper tantrum and trying to ruin my evening." "I don't care who's in there," the guard said, his tone flattening into professional boredom. "You can't be up here without a VIP lanyard, and you can't pound on the doors. Step back." I heard a softer, frantic shuffling. "Desmond, Mom, please, stop yelling," Desmond pleaded. His voice was muffled through the heavy wood, but the panic in it was unmistakable. "Let me just text her again. We can figure this out." "Figure what out, Desmond?" She declined the card. "She deliberately humiliated me in front of the entire regional board. Do you know how I looked? Like a grifter." She wasn't wrong. I set my glass down, walked over to the door, and flipped the deadbolt. I pulled it open just enough to stand in the frame, blocking their view of the luxurious box behind. Margot's face was flushed a blotchy, uneven red. She was wearing a silver sequined gown that caught the dim hallway light, making her look like an angry disco ball. Desmond stood slightly behind her, sweating through his custom tuxedo. His bow tie was already crooked. "Swipe your card again," Margot demanded, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "Right now. You march down to that little coordinator coordinator woman and tell her it was a banking error. You fix this. I looked at Desmond. Did you tell her whose money bought that table? Desmond swallowed hard. He looked everywhere but at my face. He looked at the carpet. He looked at the brass wall sconce. He looked at the security guard standing 5 feet away with his arms crossed. Desmond, I said, my voice dead calm. Did you tell your mother that you stole $18,500 from my company's payroll reserve to buy her a seat next to the governor? Margot physically recoiled, her head snapping back as if I'd slapped her. She turned to Desmond. What is she talking about? It's complicated, Desmond stammered, running a hand through his hair. I was going to pay it back. I just needed to float the expense until my new consulting contracts closed next month. It wasn't stealing. It was a bridge loan. You forged my signature on a corporate bank mandate to authorize a wire transfer, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That's fraud, Desmond. That's a felony. And then you bought me a $65 ticket next to the kitchen. I was trying to make everyone happy. Desmond burst out, his voice cracking with sudden, pathetic indignation. Mom wanted to come, and she wanted to sit with the important people. You don't even like talking to politicians. I thought I was doing you a favor by letting you sit somewhere quiet. The sheer, breathless audacity of it hung in the air. He actually believed his own excuse. He had twisted the narrative in his head so thoroughly that he genuinely saw himself as a peacekeeper who had just made a minor clerical error. You're pathetic, I said. Don't you speak to my son that way, Margot hissed, stepping forward. But the bravado was cracking. She glanced nervously at the security guard, who was now leaning against the wall, listening to every word. If you have a marital dispute, you settle it at home. You do not drag my reputation through the mud in the middle of a gala. Now, you will come downstairs, you will pay for the table, and we will smile for the cameras. No, I said. Margot blinked. What do you mean no? I mean no. The charge is reversed. The money is back in my company's account where it belongs. If you want to sit at table 1, you can hand the coordinator your own titanium Amex. Otherwise, I suggest you go collect your coats. I am not paying $20,000 for a dinner. Margot gasped. Then you aren't eating, I said. I started to close the door. Desmond surged forward, catching the edge of the wood with his hand. Wait, please, he begged. The anger was gone, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. Babe, please. The event coordinator is standing at the table right now. They're waiting for us to come back with a card. If we don't, they're going to ask us to leave the ballroom, in front of everyone. I know, I said. I'm the one who told them to do it. I looked down at his hand gripping the doorframe. He was wearing the Rolex I bought him for his 40th birthday. Move your hand, Desmond. He didn't move. You can't do this. I'm your husband. We're supposed to be a team. A team doesn't steal payroll from my employees, I said. Move your hand, or I'm asking security to remove you. The guard took a step forward, his hand resting casually near his radio. Sir, you need to let go of the door. Desmond slowly pulled his hand back. He looked completely hollowed out, staring at me like he was seeing a stranger. For 8 years, I had smoothed over every rough edge. I had paid off his credit cards when he miscalculated his expenses. I had smiled and nodded when Margot insulted my clothes, my career, my family. I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace. He had relied on that peace. He had banked on it. I closed the door. The latch clicked into place. I threw the deadbolt. I walked back out to the glass railing overlooking the ballroom. Down below, the space was a sea of glittering dresses, dark suits, and crystal centerpieces. The keynote speaker, a prominent local philanthropist, was at the podium, wrapping up his speech. Right in the center of the room, directly in front of the stage, was table 1. I watched as Vita, the event coordinator, approached the table with 2 large men in dark suits. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I didn't need to. I watched from above as Margot, her face tight and rigid, gathered her expensive silk wrap. I watched Desmond arguing, gesturing frantically with his hands, pointing up toward the mezzanine. Vita just shook her head, her face an unreadable mask of professional finality. She gestured toward the exit. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a screaming match. It was quiet, efficient, and utterly devastating. Every head at the surrounding tables turned to watch. The mayor's wife paused in the middle of a sip of wine, her eyes tracking Margot as she was escorted out of the center of the room. The local business leaders, the people Margot so desperately wanted to impress, stopped talking to watch the prominent socialite and her son be quietly marched toward the exit by event security. Margot didn't look up, but Desmond did. Just before they reached the ballroom doors, he stopped and looked up at the mezzanine. I stood at the glass, holding my martini, looking right back down at him. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked small. The doors closed behind them. Table 1 was empty. 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated. A text from Vita. They're gone. We're moving you down to the stage. It's time for your award. I finished my drink, picked up my purse, and walked to the elevator. When I stepped out onto the main floor, the atmosphere was thick. People were whispering. I ignored them. I walked straight to the backstage area where Vita was waiting. She looked entirely unflustered, holding a clipboard and a headset. Everything all right? She asked quietly. Perfect, I said. The music swelled. The announcer called my name for outstanding innovation and commitment to bridging the digital divide in our public school systems. I walked out onto the stage. The applause was loud, echoing off the high gilded ceiling of the ballroom. I took the heavy glass trophy from the governor. I smiled for the cameras. The flashes strobed, blindingly bright. I stepped up to the microphone. I looked out over the crowd. My eyes drifted naturally to table 1, sitting entirely vacant in the center of the room, a glaring void surrounded by hundreds of people. I gave my speech. I thanked my team. I talked about the importance of integrity, hard work, and building things that last. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth, but my delivery was flawless. I received a standing ovation. When the dinner portion began, I didn't stay to network. I shook the necessary hands, smiled for the necessary photos, and slipped out a side side door before dessert was served. I didn't want to go home. Home was a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs that I paid the mortgage on, filled with furniture Desmond had picked out to impress people we didn't even like. Home was where Desmond would be waiting, armed with excuses, apologies, and somehow, inevitably, a way to make this my fault. Instead, I gave the valet my ticket and drove downtown to my office. It was a little past 11 when I unlocked the glass doors of my startup. The space was dark and quiet, the only light coming from the server racks in the glass-walled tech room and the street lamps outside. I walked into my office, dropped the glass award on my desk, and opened my laptop. The adrenaline from the gala was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Desmond had forged my signature to authorize a wire transfer of $18,000. That wasn't a mistake. That took planning. He had to log into the corporate portal, bypass the two-factor authentication, which meant he had access to my backup codes, and submit the paperwork to the bank. If he had done it once for a gala table, what else had he done? I logged into the corporate banking portal again. I didn't look at the checking account this time. I pulled up the master ledger, the one that tracked every outward flow of capital, every vendor payment, every line of credit. I am not an accountant. Thad Farrow was my CFO, and he handled the granular details. But I knew how to read a balance sheet. I scrolled past the standard monthly overhead, server hosting, rent, payroll, insurance. Everything looked normal for October. I checked September. Normal. I went back to August, the month after Desmond was laid off. There was a line item I didn't recognize. Vendor payment, Apex Consulting Solutions, $4,200. I frowned, clicking on the transaction. The routing number belonged to a local credit union. I checked July. Vendor payment, Apex Consulting Solutions, $4,200. I checked June, May, April, every single month stretching back to January, long before Desmond lost his job. My heart started to beat in a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I opened a new tab and searched the state business registry. I typed in Apex Consulting Solutions. The page loaded. Registered agent, Desmond Locke. Filing date, 14 months ago. Secondary officer, Margot Locke. I sat back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen. He hadn't just stolen $18,500 for a table. He had been siphoning $4,200 a month out of my company for over a year. He had created a fake vendor, invoiced my company for non-existent consulting services, and Thad had been paying it, assuming it was a contractor I had approved. $50,000. Gone. I picked up my phone and dialed Thad. It rang 5 times before it went to voicemail. I called again. On the 3rd ring of the 2nd attempt, he picked up. Do you know what time it is? Thad's voice was thick with sleep. Boot up your laptop, I said. What? I'm in bed. The gala was tonight, wasn't it? Did you win? Thad, get up and open the ledger. Right now. The tone of my voice must have cut through his sleep because I heard the immediate rustle of sheets and the heavy thud of his feet hitting the floor. Okay, I'm up. Give me a second. I heard the click of a keyboard, the hum of his voice muttering a password. I'm in. What am I looking at? Search the vendor file for Apex Consulting Solutions. A few seconds of silence, broken only by the clatter of keys. Then, a sharp intake of breath. Okay, I see it. Monthly retainer, $4,200. What about it? Who approved that vendor, Thad? You did, he said immediately. You handed me the signed vendor intake form last January. Said it was a specialized SEO and market analytics firm we were bringing on for the 4th quarter push. Pull up the intake form. Look at the signature. I heard him clicking through the digital archives. I'm pulling the PDF. Okay, looking at it, it's your signature. It's Desmond's handwriting tracing my signature, I said. Apex Consulting is an LLC registered to Desmond and his mother. I never hired them. I never authorized this. Dead silence on the other end of the line. When Thad finally spoke, all the sleep was completely gone from his voice. Are you telling me your husband has been embezzling from our operating budget? Yes. Oh my God. I heard a chair scrape loudly across the floor. Oh my God. If he's been hitting the operating budget, hold on. I need to check the credit lines. Give me 3 minutes. I sat in the dark office, watching the cursor blink on my screen. The silence in the room was absolute. My phone lit up on the desk. Another text from Desmond. I'm at my mother's house. She is having a severe panic attack. We need to talk about how you handled things tonight. You escalated a misunderstanding into a public crisis. Please call me when you calm down. I stared at the message. A misunderstanding. Thad, I said, putting him on speaker. What do you see? I don't understand how this happened, Thad said, his voice tight, rising in pitch. The business line of credit at First National, the one we keep empty for emergency runway. What about it? It's maxed out. Someone drew down $80,000 3 days ago. My stomach dropped out completely. How? He's not a signatory on the credit line. No, he's not, Thad said, the panic now fully bleeding into his words. But I'm looking at the draw request. It wasn't wired to Apex. It was wired to a title company. A title company? I'm pulling the wire details now, Thad said. The beneficiary is Oakwood Escrow Services. Oakwood Escrow. My brain scrambled to place the name, digging through months of casual dinner conversations. Desmond's offhand comments about real estate. Margot's relentless complaining about her neighbors. Margot's condo, I whispered. What? Margot has been talking about buying the penthouse unit in her building for 6 months. She said she found a private investor. Your husband used our emergency credit line to fund his mother's real estate purchase, Thad said, his voice dropping into a hollow, terrified whisper. We have payroll on Friday. The reserve is gone from the gala table. The credit line is maxed. We have no buffer. I closed my eyes. The office felt freezing cold. Desmond hadn't just made a stupid mistake. He hadn't just tried to show off. He had methodically, systematically dismantled my company's financial safety net to fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford and to buy his mother's approval. Freeze everything, I said. Call the bank emergency fraud line right now. Lock the accounts. Change every password. I'm doing doing it, Thad said, typing furiously. I'm locking the vendor portal. I'm calling First National. I'll meet you at the bank when they open at 8, I said. I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark for a long time. My phone buzzed again. An email notification. Not from Desmond, from First National Bank. Subject: alert unusual activity on joint checking. I opened the email. It wasn't about the business accounts. It was our personal joint account. The one where my salary was deposited. The one we used to pay the mortgage. I logged into the banking app on my phone. The balance was zero. A transfer of $62,000 had been initiated 20 minutes ago, moved out of our joint account and into an external account. An account at a credit union I didn't recognize. Desmond knew I would find out about the gala money. He knew the chargeback would trigger an alert. He had gone to his mother's house, realized the gig was up, and he had preemptively drained our personal savings. He was trying to starve me out. The little red dash where my safety net used to be sat mocking me on the glowing screen. $62,000. The down payment for a house we bought, the bonuses I'd saved, the cushion I'd built so we wouldn't have to worry if the startup hit a rough patch. Gone. Swept into a credit union account I had zero legal access to. I didn't cry. The time for crying had passed somewhere around the moment I saw Margot escorted out of the ballroom. What I felt now was a cold, crystalline focus. It was the same hyper-rational state I went into when my company's servers crashed on launch day, or when a major investor pulled out at the 11th hour. Panic is a luxury for people who have a safety net. I didn't have one anymore. I opened my wallet and pulled out every piece of plastic I owned. I logged into my personal Chase account. I had a Sapphire card with a $30,000 limit. Desmond was an authorized user. Not anymore. I clicked the removal button. I did the same for my Amex. Then I went to the solitary checking account I'd kept from before we were married, an account that barely held $3,000. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and his name wasn't on it. My phone buzzed on the desk. Desmond again. I know you're upset, but shutting off the company cards and ignoring me is childish. My mother is hyperventilating. Call me. We need to handle this like adults. He didn't know I'd seen the joint account yet. He thought I was just mad about the gala and the $18,500. He thought he had the upper hand because he was holding all our personal cash hostage, waiting for me to realize I couldn't even buy groceries without his permission. I turned my phone on silent and placed it face down. I opened my email and started drafting a message to Imogen, my startup's outside corporate counsel. I kept it brief. Desmond has committed wire fraud using my signature for a fake vendor. He also drew $80K from the corporate line of credit to fund a private real estate transaction for his mother. I need a referral for the most aggressive family law attorney in the city. Call me at 7 a.m. I slept on the small modern sofa in my office, using my trench coat as a blanket. Or rather, I lay there with my eyes closed, listening to the hum of the servers through the glass wall, cataloging every lie Desmond had told me over the past 14 months. At 7:45 a.m., I was standing on the sidewalk outside the glass and steel facade of First National Bank. Thad was already there, holding 2 cups of black coffee in cardboard carriers. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. I brought you one, Thad said, handing me a cup. His hand was shaking slightly. I didn't sleep. Neither did I. At exactly 8 o'clock, the bank manager unlocked the doors. His name was Jasper Hensley, a man I'd had lunch with a dozen times to discuss small business loans and payroll services. Jasper's usual warm, golf buddy demeanor evaporated the second we sat down in his glass-walled office, and Thad laid out the printouts of the unauthorized transactions. Jasper put on his reading glasses, scanning the vendor payments and the $80,000 draw request. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. The $80,000, Jasper said slowly, tapping his pen on the paper. This was authorized through your corporate portal. The IP address matches your home network. The 2-factor authentication went to your phone. I was asleep, I said. He had access to my backup codes in the home safe. I didn't authorize it. He forged the digital signature. Jasper sighed, rubbing his temples. I flagged it with the fraud department, and we've frozen the remaining corporate accounts. But getting the funds back from Oakwood Escrow is going to be incredibly difficult, because the request came from your IP and used your secure login. The bank's initial stance will be that you failed to secure your credentials. It's an uphill battle. We can try to recall the wire, but if Oakwood has already dispersed the funds to the seller, try, I said. Now look at my personal joint account. Jasper clicked his mouse a few times, pulling up my retail banking profile. His face tightened. The $62,000, he murmured. He drained it last night, I said. I want that reversed. He took everything. Jasper looked up at me, and there was a profound, helpless pity in his eyes. It was the worst thing he could have possibly looked at me with. I can't, Jasper said softly. What do you mean you can't? I'm telling you my husband is committing financial fraud across multiple accounts. Freeze the transfer. The corporate account is one thing, because he isn't a signatory, but your personal checking is a joint account, with rights of survivorship. Under the terms of a joint account, either party has full, unmitigated legal authority to withdraw up to 100% of the funds at any time, for any reason, without the other person's consent. I stared at him. So he can just steal my salary? In the eyes of the bank, it isn't stealing. It's his money as much as it is yours. The bank cannot intervene in a marital asset dispute. You have to take that up with a divorce attorney. I walked out of the bank with Thad 20 minutes later. The morning sun was bright, blindingly cheerful, and I felt completely hollowed out. Desmond had outmaneuvered me on the personal front, because the law was designed to protect the institution of marriage, even when the person inside it was a parasite. Go to the office, I told Thad. Tell the team there's a minor banking glitch, and payroll will be delayed by 48 hours. Don't tell them anything else. I'm going to get my things. I drove the 30 minutes out to the suburbs. I parked in the driveway of the colonial house I I paid for. The house where I'd painted the trim, planted the hydrangeas, and quietly subsidized a man who was funneling my life's work into his mother's pockets. I unlocked the front door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the kitchen. Desmond was sitting at the marble island. He wasn't wearing his crumpled tuxedo from last night. He was wearing a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, looking completely put together. A fresh pot of coffee was brewing. Sitting on the counter next to him was a thick manila folder. "I figured you'd come back eventually," he said. His voice wasn't panicked anymore. The pathetic, pleading husband from the gala was gone. In his place was a smug, settled confidence that made my skin crawl. He had spoken to someone, his mother, or a lawyer, or both. I didn't answer him. I walked straight past the kitchen toward the stairs. "I wouldn't go up there," Desmond called out, his voice echoing in the hallway. "I packed a bag for you. It's in the mudroom." I stopped at the base of the stairs and turned around. "You packed a bag for me. You made it very clear last night that you aren't interested in being part of this family anymore," Desmond said, walking out of the kitchen to stand in the hallway. He crossed his arms. "You publicly humiliated my mother. You locked me out of the corporate accounts. You're acting erratically." Erratically, I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You embezzled $50,000 from my company to pay a fake vendor, Desmond. You stole $80,000 to buy your mother a penthouse. And then you drained our personal savings." Desmond didn't flinch. "I secured our marital assets because my wife is having a mental breakdown. That's what I told my attorney this morning." And he agreed. He walked over to the console table and picked up the manila folder, holding it out to me. "What is that?" I asked. "It's a temporary restraining order," Desmond said evenly. "Filed an hour ago. You were aggressive and unhinged at the gala. You locked me in a room. I feel unsafe. The judge granted me exclusive use of the marital residence pending the hearing." I stared at the folder. He wasn't just trying to starve me out. He was throwing me out of my own house. I reached out and took the folder. The paper was thick, expensive stock, the kind Margot kept in her desk. I opened it. There it was, stamped and dated by a county judge at 8:15 a.m. Temporary restraining order. He had checked the box claiming he feared for his safety. Under the section for specific incidents, he had typed out a highly sanitized, completely fabricated version of the gala. He wrote that I had trapped him in a private room, exhibited manic and threatening behavior, and unlawfully seized his personal property. The judge had granted him exclusive use of the marital residence pending a full hearing in 14 days. I looked up from the paper. Desmond was standing perfectly still, his posture stiff, but his eyes were alive with a sick, nervous excitement. I noticed his phone resting on the marble counter next to the coffee maker. The screen was dark, but it was propped up against a sugar bowl. The camera lens pointed directly at me. He was recording. He wanted me to scream. He wanted me to sweep the coffee mugs off the counter. He needed the erratic, unhinged wife he had just described to the judge, so he could take the footage straight back to court and make the order permanent. I carefully closed the folder. "I'll have a courier pick up my clothes," I said. My voice was entirely flat. I turned around, walked out the front door, and pulled it shut behind me. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I put the keys in the ignition, but I didn't start the engine. I just sat there in the driveway of the house I bought, staring at the front door. My stomach gave a sudden, violent lurch. I opened the car door, leaned out, and dry heaved into the meticulously trimmed boxwood bushes bordering the driveway. I gagged until my throat burned, spitting bile into the mulch. When it passed, I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, closed the door, and picked up my phone. Imogen called me back 5 minutes later. "I got your email," she said. Her voice was sharp. "All business. Are you physically safe right now?" "I'm sitting in my car outside my house," I said, staring at the front window. "He filed a TRO. He has exclusive use of the residence. He had the paperwork waiting for me on the kitchen counter." Imogen let out a slow, sharp breath. "Smart. Or rather, whoever is advising him is smart. He knows the wire fraud is a felony. He's building a defensive narrative. If you go to the police now, his lawyer will argue that you're making false criminal accusations to gain leverage in a contentious divorce after he took out a protective order. He stole $130,000 from my company and drained my personal checking account." "I know," Imogen said, "and we are going to nail him to the wall for it. But right now, you cannot go back into that house. If you violate a TRO, you will be arrested, and it will permanently damage your credibility. Put the car in drive and leave the neighborhood." I started the engine and pulled away from the curb. "Where am I going?" "You're going to see Blythe Ives. I already called her. She's the most vicious family law litigator in the tri-state area. She doesn't usually take walk-ins, but she's expecting you in 20 minutes. Go straight to her office." Blythe's office was downtown, occupying the top floor of a sleek, modernist building. When I walked in, I didn't have to wait. A paralegal ushered me straight into a massive corner office. Blythe Ives was in her late 50s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She didn't offer me coffee or platitudes. She pointed to the chair across from her desk. "Imogen gave me the broad strokes," Blythe said, leaning back in her leather chair. "Your husband is an embezzler, a thief, and a coward. He struck first with the TRO to control the narrative. Let me see the paperwork." I slid the manila folder across the desk. Blythe flipped through it, her eyes scanning the pages with mechanical speed. "Standard boilerplate garbage," she muttered. "The judge rubber-stamped it because the threshold for a temporary order is virtually non-existent. We'll get it thrown out at the hearing in 2 weeks. But right now, we have a bigger problem." "My money," I said. "Your company," Blythe corrected. "Imogen sent over your corporate bylaws." "When did you incorporate?" 5 years ago. Right after Desmond and I got married." "And did you have him sign a post-nuptial agreement specifically exempting the business from marital assets?" I felt a cold prickle of dread at the base of my neck. "No, Thad, my CFO, said since I was the sole founder and primary shareholder, and Desmond had no operational role, it was my separate property. Blythe closed her eyes for a brief, agonizing second. Thad is an accountant, not a lawyer. We live in an equitable distribution state. Because you incorporated during the marriage and you used marital funds, even if it was just a few $1,000s from your joint account, to file the initial paperwork and buy your first servers, the business is legally a marital asset. He owns a claim to it. I stopped breathing. He stole from it. He forged my signature, which is illegal, and we will use it against him, Blythe said smoothly. But until a judge untangles this, Desmond's lawyer is going to argue that the $50,000 he paid his fake consulting firm and the $80,000 he pulled for the condo were simply him taking an early distribution of his rightful share of the marital business. That's insane. It's fraud. It's family law, Blythe corrected. It's a knife fight in the mud. Desmond knows he's exposed on the forgery, so his strategy is to burn your house down before you can call the fire department. He's going to hold your company hostage to force you to drop the criminal charges and let him walk away with the money he took. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was Thad. Take it, Blythe said. I answered. Thad, we have a massive problem, Thad said. His voice was frantic. I just got off the phone with the payroll processor. The hold I put on the accounts this morning triggered an automatic freeze on our merchant services. We can't run payroll tomorrow. We're 18 grand short. I told you I'd handle it. I'm working on a bridge loan. That's not the problem, Thad interrupted. Tess is in my office. We just got an email from the State Business Coalition, the people who threw the gala last night. Tess was my COO. She rarely panicked. If she was in Thad's office, things were unraveling fast. What does the email say? It's from their ethics committee. Thad swallowed hard. They're suspending the award they gave you last night. They said they received a credible tip this morning that our community outreach program was being funded by misappropriated capital and that our executive team is under active investigation for financial misconduct. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Who gave them the tip? They wouldn't say. But Tess called a friend on the coalition board off the record. The tip came from Margot Locke. I closed my eyes. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. Margot hadn't just been embarrassed at the gala. She had been humiliated in front of her peers, the local elite she spent her entire life cultivating. And Margot did not lose gracefully. She knew about the embezzlement. She was the co-signer on the fake LLC. She was the beneficiary of the $80,000 real estate wire. Instead of hiding, she was going on the offensive. She was using her country club network to poison my company's reputation, framing me as the one mismanaging funds, twisting the reality so completely that I would be too busy defending my business to come after her and Desmond. She's trying to trigger a breach of trust clause with our investors, I said aloud. She already did, Thad said quietly. Arlo Quinn just emailed Tess. He wants an emergency board meeting on Monday morning. He says he heard rumors about an SEC violation regarding our operating accounts. If Arlo pulls his funding, we don't just miss payroll tomorrow. We go under by the end of the month. I hung up the phone. I looked across the desk at Blythe. My mother-in-law is calling my investors, I said. She's telling them I'm under investigation for the money her son stole. Blythe's expression didn't change, but a dangerous, predatory light flickered in her eyes. Ah, so it's not just a divorce anymore. It's a corporate siege. She pulled a fresh legal pad toward her and picked up a heavy silver pen. Margot Locke wants to play in the mud, Blythe said softly. Fine, let's show her what the bottom of the swamp looks like. Blythe didn't waste another second. She picked up her office phone and hit a speed dial button. Imogen, we need to file an emergency ex parte injunction to freeze the escrow account at Oakwood and a civil lis pendens on the property itself. I don't care if the funds have cleared. We are putting a cloud on that title so thick Margot couldn't sell a doorknob without our permission. I sat there as Blythe orchestrated a legal carpet bombing. She didn't just go after the family court angle. She went after the money. Because Margot's name was on the Apex Consulting LLC registry and the Oakwood escrow account, she wasn't just a bystander in a divorce dispute. She was an active participant in corporate embezzlement. Arlo Quinn wants a meeting on Monday, I told Blythe. If I don't have this handled by then, he pulls his money and the company dies. My payroll processor is frozen. We are out of time. Then we don't wait for Monday, Blythe said, her pen flying across the legal pad. We invite Mr. Quinn to our own meeting tomorrow morning, and we invite your husband and your mother-in-law too. Desmond filed a TRO, which means you can't go near him, but his lawyer can agree to a supervised settlement conference. Blythe kept me in the office until midnight. Thad sent over every digital log, every IP stamp, every email chain regarding Apex Consulting. We built a timeline of fraud so dense and airtight that reading it made my chest ache. It was a forensic map of Desmond's betrayal, month by month, dollar by dollar. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting at the head of the massive mahogany table in Blythe's conference room. Arlo Quinn sat to my right. He had walked in 10 minutes earlier, his face like a thundercloud, demanding answers about the ethics tip. I didn't give him excuses. I handed him a duplicate of Thad's binder. I watched his eyes scan the forged intake forms and the unauthorized wire transfers. I watched his anger shift from me to the sheer, breathtaking audacity of the theft. My husband embezzled the funds, I told Arlo flatly. He forged my signature, created a shell company with his mother, and siphoned the money. They are currently attempting to extort me in a divorce proceeding by weaponizing those stolen funds and ruining this company's reputation. I am showing you this so you know exactly where the leak was and exactly how I am plugging it. Arlo closed the binder. He looked at me for a long, calculating moment. In the startup world, investors don't just back a product. They back the founder's ability to survive a crisis. And how are you plugging it? He asked. I'm going to ruin them, I said. With your permission, I'd like you to stay for the rest of this meeting. At exactly 10 o'clock, the receptionist opened the double glass doors. Desmond walked in first. He was wearing his favorite navy blazer, carrying himself with that borrowed borrowed fragile confidence he always wore when he thought he held the winning hand. His lawyer, a tired-looking man in a rumpled suit, trailed behind him. Then came Margot. She stepped into the conference room wearing a camel haircoat and oversized sunglasses, clutching her Birkin bag like a shield. She looked around the sleek, intimidating office with an expression of hinged disdain, her eyes briefly flicking to Arlo before settling on me. "This is highly irregular," Desmond's lawyer said as he took a seat. "My client has a protective order. We only agreed to this conference because you claim to have a settlement offer regarding the marital assets." "We do," Blythe said. She didn't offer them coffee. She didn't offer pleasantries. She just slid a 2-inch thick binder across the polished wood, stopping it directly in front of Desmond's lawyer. "That is a draft of the civil complaint we are filing at 9 o'clock on Monday morning," Blythe said, her voice a perfectly modulated hum of professional violence. "It sues your client for civil RICO, fraud, forgery, and conversion. It also names Margot Locke as a co-conspirator." Margot scoffed loudly, crossing her legs. "You can't sue me for a marital dispute." "Tell her, David. I'm not suing you for a marital dispute." Blythe smiled, showing all her teeth. "I'm suing you on behalf of the corporation you stole from. You are the registered secondary officer of Apex Consulting, which received $50,000 in stolen funds. You are also the beneficiary of an $80,000 wire transfer obtained through identity theft. That makes you an accessory to felony wire fraud. And just so we're clear, Margot, the state ethics committee you called yesterday, we've already drafted the defamation suit for that too." Desmond's lawyer opened the binder. He looked at the IP logs. He looked at the forged vendor intake form with Desmond's sloppy tracing of my signature. He looked at the bank statements. Slowly, the color completely drained out of his face. He closed the folder and turned slowly to look at his client. "You told me you took an owner's draw from a joint business," the lawyer said, his voice dropping an octave. "It is a joint business." Desmond stammers, his eyes darting frantically around the room. "We're married. What's hers is mine. You forged a corporate mandate to a fake vendor across state lines," the lawyer hissed, leaning in close to Desmond. "You didn't tell me about the forgery. You didn't tell me there was an LLC. It was a bridge loan." Desmond pleaded, looking at me. "Babe, tell them. I was going to pay it back." "Here is the offer," Blythe interrupted, tapping her pen on the table. "You have until noon today to wire the $62,000 back to my client's personal checking account. You will sign a stipulation immediately vacating the temporary restraining order, and you will vacate the marital residence by 5 o'clock. And you, Margot, will sign a promissory note, secured by your new penthouse, for the remaining $130,000 to be paid back to the corporate account within 30 days. If you fail to meet these terms, we file the civil suit Monday, and I walk this entire binder over to the district attorney's white-collar crime division." Margot stood up, her hands trembling so hard her rings clattered against her purse hardware. "You wouldn't dare. You'd be destroying your own company's reputation. Investors will flee. You're bluffing." I looked at Arlo. He had been sitting silently in the corner the entire time, his hands folded over his stomach. "Margot," I said, my voice completely steady, "this is Arlo Quinn. He is my lead investor and majority board member. He has already seen everything. He knows the funds were stolen externally, and he knows they are being recovered today. My company is fine. Yours, however, is about to be liquidated." Margot stared at Arlo. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The realization hit her like a physical blow. There was no social leverage left. There were no rumors she could spread that I hadn't already sterilized with the brutal, documented truth. Her country club friends wouldn't be whispering about my failed business. They would be reading about her indictment in the local paper. Desmond surged forward, planting his hands on the table. "You can't do this to her. If she has to leverage the condo to pay you back, she'll be ruined. Her savings are tied up in it. She'll have to sell it at a loss. We're your family." "You aren't my family," I said. "You're a parasite, and I'm done bleeding for you." I looked at Desmond's lawyer. "Tell them to sign." The lawyer didn't hesitate. He pulled a pen from his breast pocket and slapped it down on the table in front of Desmond. "Sign the paper, Desmond, or find new counsel, because I am not walking into federal court to defend a forgery you lied to me about." It took 20 minutes. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the scratch of the pen and Margot's ragged, shallow breathing. Desmond signed the release for the tro. He signed the asset transfer. Margot, her aristocratic face pale and slack, signed the promissory note that essentially signed away the penthouse she had stolen from me to buy. When the bank notification buzzed on my phone, confirming the $62,000 had been wired back into my solo account, I stood up. I transferred $18,000 of it straight into the corporate payroll account. The team would get paid on time. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out of the conference room, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of their own entitlement. I rode the elevator down to the lobby and stepped out onto the busy street. The morning air was crisp and cold. I took out my phone and called Thad. "Run payroll," I said. "We're fully funded." Then I walked to my car and drove home. I didn't need a key. I called a locksmith on the way. By the time Desmond's hired movers arrived at 4 o'clock to awkwardly box up his clothes under the watchful eye of a private security guard I'd hired for the afternoon, the new deadbolts were already installed. That evening, I sat on the back patio. The house was completely silent. There were no demands for dinner, no passive-aggressive texts about my work hours, no looming shadow of Margot's next visit. I poured myself a glass of wine, set it on the table, and watched the sun go down over the yard I owned. For the first time in 8 years, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It just felt like mine.